Welcome to the Executive Espresso podcast, a sharp and to-the-point leadership podcast with insights from some of Australia's top executives. In this episode, I'm in Sydney to talk to Darren Lonsdale, the Managing Director of Prosci Change Management Australia and New Zealand. With over 20 years of leadership experience from various industries like hotels, multinationals, and large telcos, Darren has a proven track record of leading people and organizations through change and complex transformations, making him a sought-after leader in his field. I hope that you will enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Darren, welcome to the Executive Espresso podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Virg. Good to catch up as always. And yes, the cheers this morning.
Cheers.
Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Darren, we've known each other now for a couple of years.
Yes.
I'd love to get your view on what you believe leadership is.
Sure. Look, it's a great question, and one that I think with modern day leaders we struggle with to find the right mix of how to both lead and support and encourage and motivate our teams to perform. I've been very fortunate to work in a range of different positions within different industries over my career, and have seen great leadership over those years and have also seen examples of poor leadership. So as I sit here today, I think it's been a great opportunity for me to pull all the different qualities I've seen in the great leaders, attach my flavour to it, and hopefully achieve some success in the business that I'm running at the moment.
So let's dig deeper into that. How has your experience over those different industries and different sectors different types of businesses, different sizes of businesses, how have your experience influenced the way that you approach leadership now?
I think the best way to look at it is to talk about the great leaders that you've worked under, and where you've seen people who have been able to encourage and support people to achieve great performance. One thing, great performance. The second part to that is also enjoyment of their role and making sure that they're happy in their roles. So for me, I can call on probably two or three great leaders that I've worked with in different industries. One is dating right back to hotel management days, which was my first industry that I worked in after leaving school. And then second would be in the telco and ICT industry. And then third would be in the event management industry that I've worked in. So the three people that I call on for those different skills and attributes and experiences were very dynamic. They were very authentic. They also showed a level of vulnerability so that I could understand who they were and appreciate who they were as a person, not just as a leader or manager. I think that's really important for team members to be able to see you, Darren, the person, as opposed to you, Darren, who leads me every day as well.
Lots of leaders, and there's lots of white papers and videos out there talking about authentic leadership. What does authentic leadership mean to you?
It's a fascinating question. It's a fascinating question because if you look at the definition of authentic, sincere, genuine, real, and then demonstrating those behaviours in dealing with people who work for you and with you. It is difficult, though, to be authentic and vulnerable and then also manage the performance of the business because even though you do those things, you may have some team members that will work for you that maybe just aren't the right fit for the role or the right fit for the business or for the industry, right? So you can work with those people as a separate situation. But for me, my team here at the SLT, the wider team in the business, they know me, they understand me. So they appreciate the fact that I've got three boys at home. Obviously now post-pandemic, Teams and Zoom is still a part of how we operate. So there's different situations where they may be exposed to what's going on at home outside of the office. So they see you as the genuine person. Now, I think what I've learnt over many years is the fact that you need to really show an interest in your team members. So it's walking the floor. It's understanding who they are and what they do outside of work, names of family members perhaps, different hobbies and sports that they're involved in, because they can understand that people have an understanding of them and buy into who they are before they start managing performance of their role.
Has it been a conscious move for you over the years to approach your leadership with this vulnerability? Because it doesn't come very sort of clear to a lot of people around putting yourself out there.
It doesn't come easy because it's a level of being uncomfortable. And if you look at vulnerability, it's about a degree of uncertainty, right? So you need to be comfortable in the fact of who you are and what you can bring to the table. But also you need to set a safe working environment for people to feel vulnerable as well. And we do that a lot here at Prosci in relation to always talking about this is a safe space. So please feel confident and comfortable that you can share anything with us in order for us to support you to either help you personally or professionally to achieve what you want to achieve.
You're in professional services, right? So things need to be done, projects need to be managed.
Sure.
How do you strike the balance between the vulnerable leader, the authentic leader, the leader with empathy, and actually just getting your workforce to get stuff done?
It's a really interesting question because at the end of the day, we are a client-driven business. We are essentially a sales and marketing business, and change management is our product. So we have clients who deal with us and engage with us because they're expecting certain outcomes and desired outcomes. So whilst it's great to have authenticity and being vulnerable and making sure people have a safe place to be who they are, we need to remember that at the core of that, we're serving people with a product or a service, right? So we need to make sure that the desired outcomes of the client come first, but very close second is the team member. Because if you don't have comfortable and confident team members to deliver those products and services, then you won't succeed in achieving those outcomes for the client.
Have you had circumstances or situations where you've had to have those tough conversations with your employees or the people that you've managed? And how do you, being this authentic leader and vulnerable leader, and you put yourself out there, how do you approach those conversations?
They're never easy conversations because you don't want to have someone in a situation whereby they're thinking that they haven't done a good job or they're not performing or they're essentially going through a review or an assessment of the previous weeks and months' work. So I always like to place myself in their shoes first before holding those meetings, trying to get an understanding of potential factors that are influencing their poor performance before having that meeting. So that you can go into that meeting potentially with an understanding, but allowing them with a platform to explain to you and tell you what might be going wrong. Now, that could be education, it could be development, it could be support within the business, it could be the leader that they're working for, right, that they're not having a great relationship with. Breaking that down into bite-sized chunks that you can deal with the individual on to achieve success is the way that I would normally approach those types of meetings.
I mean, that's the hard part of leadership, right? Someone has to do it, right? Let's go on to the other side of things.
Sure.
What do you think is the best part of managing people?
Look, my whole career has been centered around serving clients, and I love to succeed and win. So when you've got team members who are working hard and putting in the late hours and rolling up the sleeves and doing the hard work as far as clients are concerned, it's great to see them get the wins and be satisfied in their roles. Another portion to that as well is seeing them develop and upskill in the roles. We have a real focus in the business at the moment in relation to development plans. We call them goals and growth that we run throughout the year. And there's quarterly reviews with each of those team members on whether they're achieving their goals and growth for that quarter. So we want to make sure that they're not just succeeding in the work that they're doing, the job that they're employed to do, but also developing. And now it's not necessarily developing professional attributes either. We look at personal attributes too, because in developing personal attributes, it will have an impact on their professional life at some point also.
You're providing a lot of the development and these opportunities for the people working for you.
Yes.
What about you? Do you go out and seek mentorship, or how do you as a leader go to that next level and become a better person, leader, business leader?
Great question, because you can get tied up in what's happening in the day-to-day for your own leadership teams and the wider business in the development and upskilling. But you also need to focus on yourself and develop and upskill as well. Now, for me, because I'm time poor with the amount of hours that I work, rightly or
Plus
wrongly.
3 boys.
But then also the family commitments as well. Podcasts are a great thing for me. So tapping into podcasts that are relevant for the industry, but also relevant for executives and career progression in particular. I'm actually working with my direct lead manager in the US at the moment on a development program for this year, and that will involve a mentorship. Which is going to be local here in Australia and New Zealand, but it's identifying someone who will be there that I can use as a sounding board, because having a HQ in the US, it's difficult to get hold of people face to face regularly. But using that relationship for someone that is not in change management, not in the industry, but will have an objective view of situations and things that I'm going through, and can help provide a different opinion or perspective to challenge my mindset on how it maybe have been handled better, or how I could enhance what's happening in the business and working with the team in the wider business also.
When you're managing the amount of people that you've managed over the years, plus you've got a busy family life, when do you find time to do the other stuff, right? Everyone's talking about, got to do more, you've got to do this, you've got to do this to better yourself. There's only X amount of hours in the day. How do you prioritize? Do you have a routine? Walk me through it.
It's a really good question, because being time poor, you normally go to the, well, I need to sleep less. And, everyone's aware of the 5 a.m. club that gets touted at the moment around getting up early and spending that 20 minutes on yourself and 20 minutes exercise and 20 minutes learning before you actually start your day. That can be a little difficult depending on family commitments. For me, the key word is prioritization, which is what you said in your question there. Understanding what I need to get done in that particular day and making sure there's a list of 5 priorities that don't move for that particular day. Now, if self-development is included in that 5, fantastic. But I want to make sure then that I've also got some time, where possible, on the weekend that I can dedicate to whatever doesn't get done during the week. Normally that's outside of the family commitments, obviously. But yeah, it's prioritization is the key version, I think. I'm a big fan of setting goals. There needs to be short-term and long-term goals. I mentioned previously around the goals and growth for the individual team members in the business. You also need that for yourself, as well as in your personal life, not just professionally. I'll sit down with my fiance at the start of the week and say, right, what's on for the week? What are our goals for the week? What do we need to work on for the 3 boys? What do we need for the house? What does she need so that I can support her effectively and productively throughout the week as well? So I think that's really important. And having a shared goal means that you're being held accountable to it as well throughout the week. So you have a better chance of succeeding by being held accountable to it as well.
Yeah, 100% true, right? How do you, going back to this accountability for yourself, both on a personal perspective, but also on a professional perspective?
Sure.
When you're talking to up-and-coming leaders within your organization, or just normal, up-and-coming leaders out there, what would you say they should focus on in terms of what their career goals should look like, if their goal is to be a people leader one day?
Look, first and foremost, you need to love working with people. It's very difficult to manage and lead people effectively if you're an introvert. And I have worked with leaders before who don't spend the time to actually sit with people and lead and manage people, right? So that will never have a successful outcome. For me, it's going back to that authentic theme around making sure that however you discuss actions or tasks that you want to be done within that particular role or the person that you're leading, is that they understand that you are demonstrating those behaviours also. So it's not just the words, it's the actions. And it's difficult to get to that point, because you need to be thinking about these things and holding yourself personally accountable all the time, not for 24/7, right? So there are occasions where I'll pull myself up because It's been a very busy week and it's been a stressful week and you're very time poor and it's like, well, I only have 5 minutes to discuss this right now. But you need to take a step back and think, how important is this conversation? Should I reschedule it to another time when I've got 30 minutes or 45 minutes? Or can I deal with it now in that short space of time? Because you need to ensure that they understand, and as they're growing and learning to become leaders, that they give the time that's necessary so people feel heard and acknowledged and supported.
Yeah. Something you mentioned earlier about that people, your love of people, right? To become a people leader. I see so often in the space, obviously, that I interact in that so many people, because they're doing very well in their job, it could be a technical job, whether it's finance or technology or marketing or whatever, the only promotion that they can get within the organization is to lead people.
Yes.
And sometimes that's just not who they are or what they want to do. And then they start leading people and they go on this journey and then they don't perform. And all of a sudden, a very high performer within the organization is demotivated, right? Have you seen this happen in your career before? And how have you, and if you have, what that looks like?
It's a common occurrence. As you say, people who are high-performing individual contributors in whatever role they have get looked upon by their leadership as those high performers, and they think, great, we'll promote you into managing a team because you've done that role so well. Without the skills or the education on how to lead teams. In my previous role at the Australian Institute of Management, we had a program that was the most popular program in our short course suite, which was Mate to Manager. Right, so that says it all in the theme, right? An individual contributor, you are friends and colleagues with the people you're working with. You're then thrust into a situation where you need to lead them to a level of success. You need to set people up for success if they're moving into a leadership role. So very quickly, you need to couple with their individual contributor expertise a level of understanding around how to lead people. Now, whether that's going through a tertiary program, whether that's on-the-job training, whether that's a mentorship that you look at a person who they get on well with, who's in a senior role, and buddy them up, so to speak, any of those things can support someone going from that individual contributor space into leading a team and being effective when they move into that role, rather than learning on the job and not being effective, and then having people in the team not happy with how they're being led and they're not performing.
And then some people are just market leaders in their individual space, right? And some people are people leaders. And that's okay. I think a lot of organizations get that wrong in that they don't know how to promote an individual contributor. Do we give them more money, more responsibility? But what does that look like? Because often more responsibilities, we'll just throw them into a management role.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you're going out and hiring these people to join your organization in the first place, are there any characteristics or certain traits that you look for outside of the technical resume?
Look, it's a great question because it needs to be a well-rounded approach when you're bringing people into these people leadership roles. I like to have a formal interview in relation to meeting the person and talking about their technical expertise, but then I also like to have a second follow-up meeting towards the end of the process, which is an informal meeting over a coffee to really get to know the person and understand what their drivers are, what their emotional drivers are, and why they're wanting the role and how they think they're going to succeed in the role. It also gives you a good opportunity to talk candidly about what your expectations are if they're successful in securing the role. There's a number of different things that you do to figure out if they're the right person for the role. But once they get to know you a little bit too, they'll feel comfortable to talk about potential weaknesses that you can assist them on if they're successful in securing the role too, whether it be through additional development or study, or just on the job, coaching and mentoring as well.
Building of rapport, building relationships, does that come naturally for you? Or is it something that you've had to adapt to or build over the years?
It comes naturally. I love to talk, rightly or wrongly, and most of my positions over my career have been sales and marketing based. So I've been in positions where building rapport with someone as quickly as possible has been part of the role that I've had. But I genuinely enjoy, meeting and talking to people. So, when you find someone who has an equal passion for, serving clients like what we do here in this business, it's great to share with them what we're looking to do in the future months and years, and get them to buy into the journey. So building rapport quickly has been something that I've been able to do quite easily, thankfully, to get me where I am today.
You mentioned right in the beginning of our conversation that you've had both good and bad leaders over the years, and you take pieces of the good and pieces of the bad on not what to do, etc. Is there a specific leadership style or philosophy that you follow? Whether it's a famous person or very successful person out there that you sort of emulate yourself on?
I wouldn't say it's one particular person. I mean, there's a similar theme to what we discussed at the start of the conversation. I take from a lot of different people. I think from a learning point of view, anyone who's not listening to Simon Sinek or watching his TED Talks needs to, because he actually pulls in quite a few people from different industries as well, where you can actually relate to what's happening with them easier. Locally, I would say it's people like Mark Bouris.
Oh, yeah.
Wizard Home Loans, Yellow Brick Road. He's now running the Mentored Plus programs. He's interviewed thousands of people over, I think, 10 years of doing his podcast. So jumping in and looking for the different people that are relevant for you. Mark has a great way of asking really direct questions of most people. Doesn't matter what level of hierarchy they are or status they are, and getting the right response.
Yes.
So rather than having the fluff, so to speak, around what you might be learning, it's great to be able to get small pieces of information and knowledge out of things like that. So I'd say it's a number of different people and taking bits from each of those people.
Now, one thing I ask all my guests is that if you had the opportunity to have dinner with anyone in the world, whether it is past or present, who would you love to spend some time with? And it could be anyone.
It's a fascinating question.
It's like the one where if you're stuck on an island with someone.
Who would you like to be stuck with? Because there are a number of people that come to mind for me. Look, I'm a mad golfer and also a Formula One fanatic. So if I was looking at the golf sport as a sport, it would be Tiger, obviously, to spend some time with him. Modern day, from a golfing point of view, I'd love to sit down with Adam Scott. Being one of the Australians that are now still on the circuit and still succeeding. From a Formula One perspective, it'd have to be Sir Lewis. I'd love to spend some time with him because, to reach the success that he's reached over the years, but now the jump from Mercedes to Ferrari, what was the thought process behind it? Because this is his last roll of the dice, right? To become the best that we've ever seen. A learning point of view, as I say, to be someone like Mark or a Simon that we spoke about before, someone that's dominant on the world stage at the moment, if you could secure the dinner date, would be Trump. I would love to sit down one-on-one with Trump and just try and figure out where it comes from.
I think most people would try. Probably fail dismally at trying to figure out where it comes from.
Because I mean, being in that position now for the next 4 years, like it or not, he's going to have an impact on the world stage. And we've seen over the last 43, 44 days, he's moving at pace. Right. So unless you're aware of what's happening and what he's up to, you might miss the impact that it's going to have on your particular business or industry.
It's interesting you mentioned some of those sports legends, because so many good leadership styles and elements come out of sport. Right. Is that something that you've looked at in terms of, how the All Blacks, for instance, have been so successful over the years, or how the Springboks, for instance, now just talking a bit about rugby, but there's lots of other really amazing teams and individuals who have that kind of mental fortitude to get through those tough times. You talk about golf. I stand on a tee box, I play a little bit of golf myself, and I've got one person watching me and I'm freaking out, right? Tiger's got, hundreds and thousands of people watching, and it's straight down the middle.
Look, from that golf analogy, it's a difficult thing. But I did notice there that you left the Wallabies out of the mention of the Springboks and the All Blacks. We're getting back to the world stage. We'll be there at some stage. But yeah, look, from a coaching and leadership point of view, look, I think it really goes back to the core of what we've been discussing. For you to have a team that will follow you and follow your instructions and your development and your upskilling and understanding what they need to do to deliver is all the things that we've been talking about as far as great leadership, right? When you look back over the years with the great coaches, and I know you mentioned the All Blacks and the Springboks there, but, we look back to, the Wallabies in their heyday when it was Nick Farr-Jones and John Eales and those sorts of guys. It was great coaching and great leadership that got them to that point, but it was also a passion from the team to work as a team, right?
Yeah.
And I think we've gone through a bit of a dry patch over the last couple of years. And now, with the incumbent coach now also notifying us that he's on the way out the door, it's difficult because that team now has to rebuild. So every time they lose someone that they're looking up to for guidance and direction, you have to go back to ground zero and start again.
Yeah.
Right? So it's difficult.
I think that's the magic dust that everybody looks for, is how do you build a group of very diverse people, whether it's a sporting team or a corporate organization or portfolio, whatever it may be, to get on the journey and on the same page and to move forward as a cohesive team.
Yeah. It's one thing, I'm not sure where I heard this from. I think it might have been Simon again when I was looking at one of his TED Talks and talking about the Navy SEALs in the US, right, as a team, as a unit, and what each of those team members said that they wanted to see in the fellow soldier SEAL standing beside them if they were going into battle. And it was trust and loyalty. They were looking forward to, people that had great technical expertise or who were great soldiers or great Navy SEALs. But if they were individual contributors and not willing to work as part of the team, then they didn't want them in their unit. So on the axis of what they wanted, as far as the person standing right next to them who had their back and they had to have their back, was going to be trust and loyalty. So you need to build trust and loyalty as those two attributes pretty early on.
I like that, trust and loyalty within teams. You've mentioned a couple of things about better communication, vulnerability, authenticity. What do you feel about the characteristic traits for future leaders and what they should be focusing on, or what we should be focusing on for what the future holds for us?
It's ever evolving as far as the requirements of great leaders. We have a framework that we use within our business called Clark, and that stands for communicate, liaise, advocate, resistance manager, and coach. Now, I think those 5 principles are going to be an integral part of any great leader, depending on what company or industry they're in. It's not dependent on that, as they evolve over the coming years. I mean, we're going to still have economic headwinds. We're going to have world situations that we're going to need to deal with that may impact your business or industry or may not locally. So obviously you need to be up to date as far as being informed and educated on what's happening around you and what will affect your business and your industry. But I think adhering to those 5 principles will put you in a good position to be effective and successful.
Great. What a good point to end on. Thanks very much for joining us, Darren. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.